Hello. I forgot you were here. Hello everybody and welcome to today's episode of the Pritchard Cycling News Show. It's Tuesday, we should have done this yesterday, but we didn't. So let's catch up on all the latest news. What a weekend of racing. I think I'm going to say that pretty much every single week now. It was great. So nice to have so many good races back. Strade Bianche happened. We've got Paris-Nice going off at the minute. We've got Tirreno Adriatico on its way, as well as loads more monuments. One-day classics. The season is well and truly underway. But without further ado, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you want to stay abreast of all the goings on the channel. We've got a couple of live streams coming up over the next couple of days. You're going to want to see them. We've got Veloton, we've got Zwift. Forgot about that. We've got the Wahoo Le Col ride on Thursday. If you want to be part of that, link is down in the description. Or alternatively, you can head over to Instagram and follow Wahoo Le Col Collective there. The link will be there. It's a secret link. You can't just rock up on the events page and expect to see it on Zwift. It's hidden, it's secret. All right? So do all that, do everything I've told you, sit back and relax, get a brew, and let's catch up on all the latest cycling news. All right, first up, let's talk racing news. And obviously, as I said earlier, Strade Bianche went off over the weekend. I'm not going to fill you in with everything that went off because it happened a couple of days ago. You've probably already seen it. So let's check out the results and talk about, well, you know what we're going to talk about. So over in the women's race, it was Chantal van den Broek-Black who took the victory ahead of her breakaway compatriot up that final climb into Siena, Aliso Longo Borghini. Anna van der Breggen would come over the line in third place, and a big shout to Marta Cavalli who valiantly tried to bridge that gap from that small group across to those two front riders as they headed into that final climb all the way to the finish line. But to no avail, she would come over the line in 8th place. Marianne Vos, 7th. Demi Vollering would be in 6th, Cecily Uttrup Ludwig in 5th, and Annemiek van Vleuten just missing out on a podium spot in 4th place. Now over in the men's race, it really was the Mathieu van der Poel show. There was just, well, Mathieu van der Poel did to Julian Alaphilippe what Julian Alaphilippe normally does to everybody else, and I think it shook the whole world of cycling. I think for a moment everybody stood still, mouth open wide, thinking, how the hell are we ever going to beat this man? It was just insane. Obviously, he took the victory ahead of Julian Alaphilippe, and a brilliant ride from Egan Bernal in 3rd place. Tom Pidcock would come over the line in 5th. Yeah, I know, I'm British. I'm going to give him a shout out. Fair play to him. It was his first ever World Tour race, by the way. So, you know, he definitely deserves a shout out for that. Great riding from both Ineos Grenadiers riders, but really Mathieu van der Poel was the star of the show, the MVP, the MVDP of Strade Bianche. And looking at the way he attacked up that final climb into Siena, you can't help thinking that pretty much anybody that had any hopes of winning Milan-San Remo, for instance, well, they've just gone up in smoke. The only man that, come on, everyone knows Mathieu van der Poel is going to attack on the Poggio. It's fact. There ain't no way of getting around it. He's going to attack. Unless he's not there, you know what's going to happen. Even Swifty was speaking during the Paris-Nice, basically saying, if he's there, it's over for us, because that's what's going to happen. And the only man likely to stay with him is Wout van Aert. So really, it's going to be a 2-horse race between those two. And that's not a bad thing. Like, those two going head-to-head is what everybody wants to see. But at the same time, you can't help thinking that, you know, the likes of Swifty, Arnaud Démare, I don't care about him anyway, but those riders, I mean, what can they do? What can they do? They're not going to be able to do anything against these riders. They're going to have to hope for a lot of bad luck for Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert. But hey, who knows what's going to happen? But it's safe to say that, you know, a lot of riders looked at that and went, that's our season done and dusted then, isn't it? We ain't got a chance of winning anything. If he turns up to our race, we're pretty much bloody screwed. But let me know what you think down below. Did you see Alpecin Fenix's tweet with his power data? Insane. Now, I don't know what's more impressive. 20 seconds at 1,004 watts. 60 seconds at 738 watts. Or the final 60 kilometres were covered in 1 hour and 30 minutes at a normalised power of 439 watts. I do it. And I know I'm fanboying over him, but come on, he is something special. Leave your comments down below. Sum up Mathieu van der Poel in one word for me. Do it now. And let's move on to everything else that's happening in the world of cycling. First up, Paris-Nice got underway. Sam Bennett took the first stage victory In the second stage, which was yesterday, Case Ball actually put a decent lead out together with his team. Well, I say it was decent. They did all right for once. They actually came through and took the victory. Today is the individual time trial, and it's currently going off at the minute. So with a little bit of skill and editing, I'm going to tell you the result in a second. Simon Bissiger ended up winning it. Congratulations to him. What a great victory. Well done. And here's the GC now. No idea what it looks like, but somebody's in the yellow jersey. Others, they're not. Stage 4 is tomorrow. And then rounding out the race news, massive shout out for this one. I'm bloody happy to see this. I mean, it wasn't a typical sprint, not the biggest race in the world, but GP Jean-Pierre Mosseret was on at the weekend, 202 kilometres. Tim Merlier took the victory. I think he was a bit surprised at the gap he had. I don't know if he was leading someone out or what, but he had a look around, realised that he had a bit of a gap and just carried on. Second place though, got to hand it to him. Probably the best, I hate to say it, probably the best result he's going to have all season. Mark Cavendish back to being at the front of a sprint. Cracking result from Cav. We love to see it. We bloody love to see it. There's two things I want to see by the end of this season. One in MotoGP that has nothing to do with cycling, but let's get Valentino Rossi over the line in first place for one race. And also Mark Cavendish. Let him retire with just one more victory. Let him get his hands in the air just one more time. He deserves it. He deserves a moment in time right now when a lot of people are forgetting about him, to put his hands in the air and say, you know, at one point in life, I could have beat all of you. Because, yeah, being in the twilight of your career, I guess, it's hard to think back to those days and think how good he was, because he was amazing. And a lot of people forget that nowadays because they just see these new youngsters coming through, and Cav definitely deserves a victory before the end of the season. Anyway, leave your comments down below on all the race news. What was your highlight of the race weekend? What was your highlight of Paris-Nice? What's been your highlight of Strade Bianche? Is anybody ever going to beat Mathieu van der Poel? And also, yeah, sum him up in one word. Ish. Next up in the news, let's talk about this story, mainly so I can use it in the thumbnail, but it is worth talking about because Bradley Wiggins, on his new show over on Eurosport, the Bradley Wiggins Show, said this about Chris Froome.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Froome again there, and obviously we've heard from Sherry Pridham on what they might expect from Froome this year. I mean, she said, why not? If he's going for a 5th Tour de France, yeah. Is he capable of doing it? It's quite a nice position for him to be in a way, and he said as much, in that he's now a team that's not necessarily expected to win it.
No, and I think that's probably what he needs at this stage of his career. You know, the regaining of the confidence and his physical condition this year, but he's capable of a 5th, definitely. I think the racing has changed so much just in the last 2 years alone. The way the races, the riders that are capable of doing well. The Tour de France, the structure of the Tour has changed in the last 2 years. The way they race it, it's very close now to the last stages, and I think it's going to be difficult for him, but it's never easy winning the Tour de France.
Did it? Has Bradley been keeping up with cycling over the past couple of days? The past couple of weeks? The past year? Come on. I hate to put a downer on it. I hate to, but there's absolutely categorically no way Chris Froome is going to win another Grand Tour. Nada. And if he does, I will ride the equivalent of said Grand Tour that he wins on Zwift for 21 days. I will. I'm not afraid. That's how confident I am. I just cannot see it happening. If you think he can still win one, leave your comments down below and let me know how and why. I mean, the only advantage he has got is the fact that, like Bradley Wiggins said in this, that Israel Startup Nation aren't seen as a threat to GC. No one's looking at them and saying, we need to be careful of them. If Froome goes on a break, they're going to go, he'll come back. Like if one of the youngsters goes on a break, one of those riders likely to win GC, if they're on a break, people are going to attack. So the only way he's going to win is if people really don't respect him as a rider. But I think they know him too well. They know that he's not going as well as he potentially could be, and I don't think he ever will again. But leave your comments down below about this one. I don't know, why? Honestly, do you think Chris Froome can still win a Grand Tour? Obviously, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen in a 21-day stage race. But a lot of shit has got to go right for him to be in a position to take a victory at a Grand Tour. I just can't see it happening, but makes a great thumbnail, makes a great story. Leave your comments down below. Bradley Wiggins, is he talking out of his ass? And then finally, coming up in today's show, I had a chance to sit down with Laura from the Peloton Brief. We had a chat this week, so rather than leaving her to have a bit of a rant about something within the professional peloton, obviously yesterday, you must have seen it was all over social media, International Women's Day. March is the month of International Women's History Month, so what better time to sit down and have a chat with her about all the fallout from the Patrick Van Gansen healthmate situation. I think that's the best way to describe it. How the UCI handled it, the punishment that the UCI gave him, and what can be done within the industry of cycling and the women's professional peloton to make sure that this doesn't happen again and riders feel confident enough to speak out about any abuse, both physically or emotionally, that they're receiving within the professional peloton. So without further ado, let's head over there now. This was pre-recorded yesterday.
About Patrick Van Gansen and the whole situation. So I guess my take on it, Chris, is that it's not an ideal world, and it's not great that the UCI has done just a 2-year ban retroactively that sort of applies for, however many months, 18 months or whatever it will be. The truth is, when you look at the bigger past decade or 5 years of when the Me Too movement has really sort of started to take hold on people, if you look at a lot of the situations and some of the more high-profile situations recently, Joss Whedon, who was the, I think, director of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and a bunch of other teen popular shows, he's basically been accused by most of the women, or most of the women have come out and said that it was a really abusive environment. Now, I doubt that Joss Whedon will in any way be prosecuted under the law for this, and it's not like the Screen Actors Guild probably even has the same legal remedies that the UCI might have. But what will happen is that Joss Whedon will probably never get a job directing a high-level TV or movie again for the rest of his life, or hopefully we can think that. His reputation is trashed. People will not be interested in seeing things that he's involved in. And I think that we as a cycling world and a cycling community need to actually take a much bigger step in having a say. We do have a say in how these things work. So all of the race organizers out there, they have a choice to put any team, any future healthmate team in a race. They can deny them race entry. There's no reason that any team is guaranteed race entry. We should be making sure, as things like the Cyclist Alliance and other resources for young female riders, that we can help women that really feel like they need a team to find alternative teams so that they're not stuck or ever put in a position where they feel like they have to ride for that team. And the thing is, I do think that we're seeing a bit more of it. This is quite a contentious situation, so I'm not sure it's always one that's best to talk about, but clearly most people know there were issues in the past with Thomas Campana and and his Bigla team, which the rules of the ethics committee have changed and the ethics commissions have changed. So since the time that it was reported, and then based on when the rules changed, there were some issues in the same thing where girls were making statements, then withdrawing them, and the legal in and out of that. But what we did see happen this year, which we can see for fact, is that the team was in a bad situation. But then there was media that came out about, again, what had happened in the past. And what we can't say for sure is whether or not that had an influence in it. Mm-hmm. But the media did do their job in reporting fully and saying this has been the situation with this team in the past. And it is the media, I think it's the media's responsibility to fully keep these things present and in people's minds, because the cycling audience also can forget so easily. I mean, come on, look at the way that we love ex-dopers, even though, but it's once they've served their ban, you come back and love them and all is forgiven. And I think it's actually really important to remember that that shouldn't be the case with these situations. And
surely not. Surely.
I mean, I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but just keep on it and keep on the Twitter and keep on your keep your eyes and ears out and don't let things happen. And if you see that this guy is coming back and he wants to start a team and he's saying, oh, it's going to be Healthmate again. Well, let's put pressure on Healthmate, the company, and say, hey, actually, we think this is a really bad idea. We don't support your company sponsoring this team because we don't support this guy. The same situation, there's been a lot of rumors around Dolcini Van Eyck team and the same situation around there. And what's going on there? Well, put pressure on Dolcini. there's companies behind this that we can actually go out and reach out to and say, hey, this isn't where you should be putting your money behind. Like, we're not going to buy from your company if you support this team. So basically my take on it is, it would be great if the UCI and the governing bodies could do more, but let's not all forget to do our own part in it too. And in the same way that everybody says, like, actually the real thing is when you vote, you vote with your money. Like, you vote whether you buy off Amazon or not. You vote whether you buy a Virgin phone or Virgin Media broadband or a small independent company or 3 mobile and get no service. But it's,
do you think, like you said with that producer, his reputation is tarnished. He'll probably never work again. Is that punishment enough for somebody that does what they do, though, or do they need that punishment of jail time?
I think the thing is that you've got an issue here with what is like I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you whether what they're doing is legally punishable or not in jail or not. Like, yes, sexual assault and rape are definitely punishable by jail time, but I don't know whether pressure is. I don't know. Like, I'm not, and I think that a lot of issues here because of international law as well, that you're working with somebody in Belgium that's talking to somebody in the States, and where does the jurisdiction fall? Like, I think the cases would be really hard to prove in court.
And do you
not saying it's right or wrong, saying that I'm no expert in like the legal ramifications of it, but
like, do you think he's in a position where he could potentially come back? Because obviously he could technically go back and start a women's team up after December 2022. But is his face recognisable enough? Has there been enough media coverage in his name so as soon as someone hears that, like, as soon as I hear that name, I know who it is and what he's done? But if he just goes and says, I'm Patrick and I want some money for a sponsor, do you think that the companies are going to go that far into it and go, hold on, this is that guy that was accused of X, Y, and Z, and let's not give him the
I think it probably hasn't been. That's what I mean about the media and the doing their part as well. And I think that, Abby's article in Cycling Tips was a huge start in that, to sort of really, and it is the media's responsibility. It's the fourth estate. We have to all collectively talk about these things and keep talking about them. It just it's a huge power.
Yeah, it shows you the disparity though. You have Quinn Simmons, who did what he did over on Twitter. The world exploded. Everyone knew about it. But this, like, obviously it has been out in the news, but there doesn't seem to have been, or at least I've not seen that same level of outrage across Twitter, people retweeting, like you said, getting his name out there, getting his face out there so people know who he is and what he's done.
I mean, Quinn Simmons also, he did in this actually insult one of like the authoritative female voices in cycling. But, and I think that was quite interesting. I think it was also a super like hot spot, the timing of all of it. It's still going on. The follow-up interview didn't help anybody. So, but it's he's a big name and he made a big splash because
he was an idiot.
I know. And this is a smaller thing. It's not a smaller thing, but it's a smaller thing in the eyes of people. It's less sort of like.
But that's it. Yeah, it's.
I think part of it is that people care when they see a rider going through something, and they don't care like, oh, Quinn Simmons totally fucked up. Like, whoa, like what's going to happen to him? Mm-hmm. Whereas they don't care as much when it's like a team manager that's done it. It's just.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We should, let's find a photo of this guy. Put his face over it. We should put his face right now on the screen.
Boom. There you go. That's
3,
him.
2, 1, boom.
Do not employ this man.
Screenshot this.
Send it to everybody. No, I think you're right. The media does have to do more, because I think they're relying on the UCI. But like you said, what can the UCI do? Obviously, the retroactive ban is a terrible idea. Like, he should have been banned from the moment that they decided that he was guilty and gone from there. So that the fact that he can come back at the end of next year is crazy. Like, so. But from the rider's point of view, the people that are suffering this abuse, whether it's physical or mental, how do you encourage them to speak up about it? Because they don't. I guess a lot of them would fear, especially in the women's peloton. I think I said this in the news show. Like, they're trying to build their career. They're trying to get to the top of their sport, and they know that if they're seen to be, a troublemaker, and not that they are causing trouble, but they could appear to be causing trouble by complaining about this stuff, and other teams aren't going to want to touch them. They're not going to progress the way they want to. So it's almost counterintuitive to actually say anything and just accept it.
I think a big thing that actually needs to be looked at, it's sort of how you create a better development system in general in women's cycling. So now you have this like mandate that like all World Tour teams, they either need to have a women's team or a development team. But nobody's saying, hey, you can have a women's development team, which is really, so what you get generally is you have your teams, you have your World Tour teams, and you have the sort of the teams that right below it, the established good teams that are entering the big races that were at Strada this weekend. Then you have these like, you got like a sort of continental level. You're looking at teams like Drops that are really well organized. Maybe they're not, paying a full-time salary to riders, but they're doing a really good job, good sponsorship, good media, everything around it. And then what you tend to have is a sort of sketchy setup where there's girls that are paying to be on a team and race in Belgium. So they're literally paying to somebody to be flown over and given team kit and race around small races in Belgium. And what this is that a lot of it is a big absence of development team and strong continental level riding for women. So I think a big thing to look at to the future is actually how the other thing that the media does have the power to do is it has a massive power to influence sponsors and where people are putting money based on coverage. So let's see more development teams getting covered the way that Action, Hagen Berman's or Action, whatever it's called now, where these smaller teams are getting covered and where the way that Wiggins was covered. Let's start to see some better coverage of the women's development teams so that smaller women's teams, so that sponsors are encouraged to put money into that. So there's a more constructive way for women to get into cycling so that they're not in this situation.
So you think if that was the case and they could see a clearer path, if the women's world tour was as established as the men's, do you think these women would be afraid to come out and say, listen, that Team DS was inappropriate and did this, or do you think they're always going to have that problem?
There's always going to be intimidating men, and look, the truth is as well as most women's teams, you're still looking at like an 80-20 split staff from men to women. So men are in the position of power across the board in this. There's a few. Ezra does a great job running a women's team. That's but there's very few women in managerial positions, even in womenens cycling. So
are we going to see that change over the next?
I really hope we will.
Years?
It takes a long time to sort of change this stuff through. You can see it at Trek, actually. They have Georgia Bronzini, who's a director there now, and she's doing a fantastic job. And oh my God, with Ina Teutenberg, I'm just like at a blank moment on her name. And they do an amazing job, and it's great to see that. And Trek really paved the way forward for that. But it does take some time as well. So generally, a sports director, you're looking at ex-riders. So firstly, you have to find the riders that want to carry on with the life on the road after that. So the money has to be good enough to want to stay and do that after you've been living your life on the road for a while. And the pathway to getting a director's license, and it just takes some time to actually get those people through the system, because the directors are basically the management of the team. So you've got like a team owner, manager, and then you've got the sports director. So hopefully we start
hopefully in the next 5 or 10 years' time, we'll see women sports directors as the norm within women's peloton, which will then hopefully get rid of this whole
it'll balance it a bit. It's something else that we've spoken about as well. One of the reasons that these problems seem to come up a lot in women's teams is that there's a very singular power structure at the top. So in a men's cycling team, men's world tour team, you've got an owner, you've got a general manager, and you've got like 5 or 6 sports directors.
Yeah.
And you've got like a coach, you've got like sometimes a psychologist. You have all these people that then filter down to the riders. And in a women's team, you've got, maybe one manager or owner, 2 or 3 sports directors, and that's it.
Yeah.
So if you upset your manager, you don't really there's no recourse. There's nobody else to talk to. If you upset the sports directors, they're both, it's not, because everybody's going to have a sports director on their team they don't like to work with that much. But in the women's team, it's like, oh, you might only have one.
Yeah, you have no choice.
Yeah, so there's no way to keep these people in sort of in a checks and balances system,
And that comes back down to money, doesn't it? That comes down to sponsorship. That comes down to coverage, and I guess it comes down to the one place that can really affect it, which is the media. Like the media has the potential to make women's cycling as big in the next few years as men's cycling, doesn't it?
But as an example, so like I work with the FDJ women's team doing international press with them, and I was out at Strada, and I'm there on a basis of, you know, I'm there for the race with them, but I was out there early, freelancer. So I was with Bora for their recon, set up through Bora, the company. And the amount of people that sort of emailed, you know, asking for photos, buying photos from the Bora recon compared to the people that wanted anything extra from me from the women's race, which is like, I mean, it's quite frustrating. It is because I'm like, well, shit, I gotta make money.
Yeah.
You know? And it doesn't encourage, but I want everybody to say, oh, we want Laura, can we have these pictures from the women's race? But
that's crazy that they don't care. They care less about the women's race than they do about a bit of a recon training session with the men.
It's been more exclusive though, isn't it? So
well, I suppose so, but
yeah. But I hope we can encourage, and I guess at the end of the day, in the same way we can say, oh, it's the media's responsibility, but what it also comes down to is it's all of you guys, it's the end users' responsibility to click on the articles and read them, because it's not like people are just throwing things up at cycling tips and going, okay, that's there, and moving on to the next thing. There are people in their commercial department checking what's getting read, how many Google ad impressions are in there each day. So every time you open an article about women's cycling, it's helping women's cycling.
Yeah.
Just read it. Just read it. If you're going to, you know, put on the women's race in the background, even if you're not fully watching it, because that's going to click into the Eurosport viewership numbers. Like, you know. That's
it. Again, it comes back to that Quinn Simmons example of people want to see that drama and they want to read about it, so they'll go and just they'll search that out. Whereas, like you say, they'll not go out of the way to search. And I do it as well. Like on our channel, I know what will get views compared to something else, and you kind of just have to play the game a little bit. But at the same time, what we're trying to do, and you know, you can always do it a little bit better, is to try and get that news across and let people know that there has been a women's race this weekend, or this is what's happening in the women's peloton at the minute. And the more people, like you say, the more people that talk about it, the more normalised it becomes, and the more people start searching out for it, then
and the more people read
money come into it.
Article on Cycling News about it, the more Cycling News says, actually, this is worth us covering because our, you know, commercial ad department is happy. Because at the end of the day, it's, you know, I mean, we've all gotten to this point where we're like, oh, everything on the internet is free. But somebody's got to pay the people that work at Cycling News, and that's coming from the department. And you know, it's how it works. Like people say, "Oh, if it's free for you, then you're the product." And yeah, it's true. You know, so,
point,
yeah.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your lot for today. Make sure, if you're not done already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live with our videos. If you've disliked the video for whatever reason, I don't care. Leave your comments down below. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you on the next one.